Hi, it's Trevor Emden here. I've got something really, really different for you today. I've got a law of attraction challenge for you. Now, before I tell you the challenge, I'm going to tell you a story, a true story, and I'm going to put the pieces together bit by bit, okay? So, this story happened to me on, just looking at the calendar here, Friday, October 16th. 2015. So it's just a couple of days after that now, so I'm recording this, but I don't know when you'll see it. So just to say that A, it was a weekday, and B, that was a real marker point in my life, in my beliefs. Okay, so here's what happened. So I had been out in the morning, and driving home, there was an ambulance past me with all its lights flashing. And a couple of miles down the road, I didn't see the ambulance again, but there were a lot of police cars. There'd obviously been a big incident at a junction, and the police had closed off that road. Now, it wasn't a road I needed to go on, but I needed to cross that junction. So the police had crossed off the road to the left, and I needed to go straight ahead. So that turned out to be, I don't know exactly what happened, but quite a big incident, and the police had that road closed off for about 3 miles for several hours, as it turned out. Now, also that day, friends of ours had told us that a mutual friend was probably doing a whistle stop in the country, because he lives in France and Switzerland. But he was just here probably for half of the weekend, and it was expected to arrive on the Friday. I had phoned those friends in the morning, and they told me that the mutual friend's plane was delayed, so they weren't sure exactly what time he would arrive. Now, skip to my domestic life. I'm back at home. The ambulance has passed me on the way. That hasn't affected my life in any significant way, and I'm just working on my laptop. My wife works shifts. She's a cook. She's a chef. So she'd been cooking the lunchtime menu, and usually she's home around about 2:30 when she's done that shift. On this day, she was late, about 25 minutes late or so, and it transpired that the reason she was late was because of the road closure, and although she doesn't use that road, it had forced traffic off onto other minor roads that she does use, and it had caused some traffic jams, so she was delayed by that. At the moment she walked into the house, our phone rang, and I answered the phone, and it was our friends to say that the mutual friend had finally arrived from France, and did we want to meet for a coffee there and then. So as my wife had literally just walked into the door, hadn't even got her coat off, still in her uniform, I said to her, shall we go and meet these friends for coffee? She said, yeah, why not? I've just arrived, that would be great. So I said to them, yeah, okay, and we'll meet you at our usual venue. And then the friend said, well, our mutual friend wants to go to another local town, and he has to be there by 5 p.m. And the town that he wanted to go to, the main artery to that town, is the road that the police had closed off. So I then said to my friends, well, tell him there's been some incident or accident on that road, and my wife's just been delayed by it, so it must still be there. I was there a few minutes ago, and it started a couple of hours ago because that's when an ambulance passed me. So it meant he couldn't go that way. Now there is another route, and it's a bit longer way round, but there is another route. And as a result of him saying, well, I'll go this other way then, we changed the coffee venue to a completely different one, where we don't normally go. Now, I just want you to get the number of moving parts that had happened for what I'm about to tell you to occur. I also want to say that I'm not delusional enough to think that all those things happened for me or because of me, or that I in some way influenced them. But we were, or I felt, as it were, maneuvered bit by bit into fewer and fewer options. There was a tiny window of time. There's only one other worthwhile route to the town that my friend wanted to go to. If he hadn't been late, we could have met an hour or so before. If my wife hadn't been late, we might not have met at all, because she would have been having her own lunch by then, and she doesn't have much time before she has to go back and do the evening cooking, and so on. So a lot of things happened that all came together in this perfect storm, as it were, with apologies to whoever was involved in the accident. So we went to that coffee shop. We had a small window of time, A, because my wife had to go back to work, and B, because our friend needed to get to this rendezvous in this other town by 5 p.m. So in fact, by the time we met, we had about 50 minutes together. My wife and I got there first, ordered our coffee. Our friends arrived a few minutes later. They sat down and joined us, and the five of us were just chatting over a coffee. When in walked, to the same coffee venue, two women who didn't look at us, and they went and sat at a table a little distance away. But I knew one of those women. She was an old friend, and the last time I saw her, she'd not long had a baby, and that baby was still, in nappies, with a dummy. I think if you're watching this in America, you call all those things something different. Diapers, and I can't remember what you call. Anyway, I'm sure you know what I mean. And that child, I discovered, because I spoke to her, is now 16 years old. So it's at least 15 years since I've seen that woman. Now, it transpires that we actually have remained not that far apart. She lives in another town, maybe 10 miles from where I live, but we have never seen each other for 15 years. Not spoken to each other, don't have each other's contact details, we're not Facebook friends. I just didn't know what had become of her. She was just a friend that I knew in the late 1990s and the first 2 or 3 years of the 2000s, and then we lost touch. I moved, she moved away, started new lives. Things happened. Hadn't seen her for 15 years. So I went and said hello, and we exchanged pleasantries, and that was that. Coincidence. Now, why am I telling you all this complicated story? Well, 6 days before that, I had been challenged to participate in a law of attraction experiment. And here's the experiment. And I'm going to challenge you to do the same. And the experiment was, and is, to think of 4 things. Think of a person you personally knew who passed away in the last 5 years. Not a celebrity, not someone famous, someone whom you knew meant something to you. That's one thing. Second thing, think of a person that you've lost contact with, but who, as far as you know, is still living. The third thing was to think of a food, a dish that you used to like or was a favourite perhaps, but that you haven't eaten or tried for years. Maybe something you used to like as a child. And the fourth thing was a word, to pick a random word that you wouldn't usually hear in your conversation. So my word actually was feather. Now, obviously, if you're an ornithologist, that's probably not a good word to pick, because it's probably a word you would use pretty often. You see what I mean? So pick a word that is a noun, a name of something, but not something that you would usually hear in conversation. And to write those 4 things down, so that's someone who's passed away in the last 5 years, whom you personally knew, a long lost friend, a dish, something you used to eat but you haven't seen or heard of or eaten for a long time, and a random word. That's it. Put them on a piece of paper. Put that piece of paper inside a sealed envelope. Date the piece of paper, by the way. And then seal the envelope and write on it, to be opened on, and then the date 7 days from the date of the piece of paper. 7 days' time. Now, I had written on my piece of paper the name of that woman. I haven't seen her for 15 years. The day I saw her was 6 days into my 7-day experiment. Now, the other 3 things didn't show up. But when I saw her, actually, I completely had forgotten about the piece of paper, completely forgotten about the experiment, totally forgotten it. It wasn't until the 5 of us all said our farewells and went back to our respective cars, and I was driving home, my wife beside me, and it suddenly struck me, my goodness, I wrote her name on that piece of paper. I'd completely forgotten. Now, yes, coincidence proves nothing. Scientifically, this is a no-go. This is not for scientists. But it may be for skeptics, because to me, it's as near as you can get to proof that thoughts are things. It makes a difference what you think and what you think about. And here's the rub, because it was a nice rendezvous, we may not ever see each other again for all I know. That's not the point. The point is, are you thinking about things as a habit that are self-defeating? Thinking about things that, like, oh, I can never do that, and these kind of things never work for me. Why? Why would you do that to yourself? Try the experiment. Just try it. Now, it's not going to work 100% of the time. It's not going to work for everybody, and it's very unlikely that anybody will get all 4 things. Just try the experiment, because the alternative is to go with a belief of, oh, it doesn't work. I know it's slightly wacky. I know it flies in the face of what we think of as logical and scientific and provable. And this is not about scientific and provable. It's demonstrating to yourself that you have in here far, far more power and influence than you have ever imagined. And what I want to say to you, what I want to point out is there was no effort involved in what I did. I wasn't daily visualizing meeting that woman, or I didn't even know where she was living. I think I was probably fairly confident that she was living, but other than that, I hadn't seen her or had any contact or any reason to have contact with her for 15 years. You know, just think about what that means. What were you doing 15 years ago? How old were you 15 years ago? How much has happened to you in 15 years? For us to be in the same coffee shop at that exact moment, and we only had this tiny window of time, and had it not been for the delayed plane and the blocked road, we wouldn't have all met at that time, and we wouldn't have gone to that coffee shop. It's astonishing. To me, that's astonishing. Now you may say, well, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Scientifically, yeah, I am. But at a personal level, it was gobsmacking. Now, I can't tell you enough, and I can't convey to you what that feels like inside me, other than by trying to put across in words and maybe my expression how powerful that was. But I hope I've inspired you to try that experiment, and to leave some comments below this video. This will be posted both on YouTube and on my blog, about what happens, and let's actually start something going here. Law of attraction experiment, and hopefully we'll get some inspiring stories out of it. Okay, I've been talking far too long, so I'm going to end this video now, and I look forward to hearing your stories and reporting us back, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.